So we are doing many lies, many answers. That was the last one. Conversations with God. That's what we're doing. That's what we're studying here. So if you guys are like popping in and asking for readings or wanting a reading, that's it. It's over with. That was last hour. This is the study group time. So that's what we're doing right now. So we are reading a Conversations with God, which is a really great book. One of my favorites, actually. And so we're going to do, I'm going to read through the passages. So in this book, there's a conversation happening between Neil, who is the author of the book, and then God, who is the consciousness or the conversation, the information that is flowing through him having this conversation in his mind, because he's writing it down as it's happening in his head. It's no different than channeling. It's no different than when I'm connecting with Aja and I'm, asking questions and Aja is responding as well. So that's what this is about. So every time I'm reading Neil's part, I will say his name, Neil, and then every time it's God, I'm going to say God, and then I will read whatever's there as well. If you guys have questions about the content or the material or anything relating to such, feel free to ask those. I will check to see what questions there are before I get off today. So if you would like to ask us some questions or inquire some things as well regarding the material, not personal readings, then feel free to do so. Okay. All right. So last time we left off, the question. So Neil, this is Neil. You make it sound so easy, and yet in the moment of decision, fear wins more often than not. Why is that? So what's happening here is the last time we left off, Neil was talking to God and was asking God about essentially how every, what was the last question? Because I want to make sure I get that clear. A lot of God in here. When you say that a prayer is a statement of what is so, are you saying that God does nothing, that everything which happens after a prayer is a result of the prayer's action? So that was the last question that Neil asked. And I went into that in great detail in the last study group. So God gave an answer back, which has to do with where our choices come from. Either they come from a place of love or a place of fear. When we are praying, there are different ways to pray, but many times we're praying from a state of lack because we are praying for something to change or for something to be fixed. But when you're praying from a state of lack, it essentially will you're actually asking for. And so God was going into an explanation about that. And so now pray properly and to get the thing or to assume the thing that you're praying for. And so Neil was like, you make it sound so easy, and yet in the moment of decision, fear wins more often than not. Why is that? So why is it that when we pray from, when something is going on and we are praying, we're not able to pray from a place of like affirmation that we're praying or we're summoning from a place of fear and lack, so most of the times that's what we do. Why is that? So that's what he's asking God here. So God's answer is, you make it sound so easy, and yet in the moment of decision, fear wins more often than not. Why is that? This is God's answer. You have been taught to live in fear. You have been told about the survival of the fittest and the victory of the strongest and the success of the cleverest. Precious little is said about the glory of the most loving. And so you strive to be the fittest, the strongest, the cleverest. In one way or another, and if you see yourself as something less than, this is any situation. You fear loss, for you have been told that to be less is to lose. And so, of course, you choose the action of fear sponsors, for that is what you have been taught. Yet I teach you this. When you choose the action love sponsors, then will you do more than survive. Then will you do more than win. Then will you do more than succeed. Then will you experience the full glory of who you really are and who you can be. To do this, we operate from this perspective. So what happens is when we as soul beings, when we as individuations of the divine begin to evolve or grow, it's not that we're learning anything new. It's that we're remembering what we are in its fullest form. So when we expand, when we grow, when we evolve, when creation, it's actually just us expanding into the complete of God, the completeness of God, that which is God, because God is already there. God is already, ahead of all of it. So it's not necessarily that God is expanding. Creation is expanding, but creation is the expression of God. It isn't necessarily only God. It is the expression of God. And so, meaning that, God is not only creation. Creation is just kind of an expression, a form of source. Just like we are all creations as well. So that's what is meant by that. So when I talk to people and I say, your soul is gaining or learning, I don't technically mean that your soul is stupid and doesn't know this, so it's going through all this process to learn. It already has that information. It's just experiencing it, because knowledge without experience is simply a concept, and we wish to experience ourselves in our fullest form. The only way we can do that is by experiencing ourselves in our fullest form. So we expand and experience in these micro versions so that we can gain and understand. We don't have the capacity to act as the grand version of ourselves, as God in the grandest version. We don't have the capacity in this form, but we are that. We are that. And so we're just remembering. So it's all about remembering. It's not necessarily about learning. But I'm still going to use the word learning because some people don't understand that. We already know these things. We already have all of this awareness. Okay? So coming back to this. So as where God left off, you are not discovering yourself, but creating yourself anew. Seek, therefore, not to find out who you are. Seek to determine who you want to be. Neil, there are those who say that life is a school, that we are here to learn specific lessons, that once we graduate, we can go on to larger pursuits, no longer shackled by the body. Is this correct? God, it is another part of your mythology, based on human experience. Neil, life is not a school? God, no. Neil, we are not here to learn lessons. God, no. Neil, then why are we here? God, to remember and recreate who you are. I have told you over and over again. You do not believe me, yet that is well as it should be. For truly, if you do not create for yourself as who you are, that you cannot be. Neil, okay, you've lost me. Let's go back to this school bit. I've heard teacher after teacher tell us that life is a school. I'm frankly shocked to hear you deny that. God, school is a place you go to if there is something you do not know that you want to know. It is not a place you go if you already know a thing and simply want to experience your knowingness. Life, as you call it, is an opportunity for you to know experientially what you already know conceptually. You need learn nothing to do this. You need merely remember what you already know and act on it. Neil, I'm not sure I understand. God, let's start here. The soul, your soul, knows all there is to know all the time. There is nothing hidden to it, nothing unknown. Yet knowing is not enough. The soul seeks to experience. You can know yourself to be generous, but unless you do something which displays generosity, you have nothing but a concept. You can know yourself to be kind, but unless you do someone a kindness, you have nothing but an idea about yourself. It is your soul's only desire to turn its grandest concept about itself into its greatest experience. Until concept becomes experience, all there is speculation. I have been speculating about myself for a long time, longer than you and I could collectively remember, longer than the age of this universe times the age of the universe. You see, then how young is, how new is my experience of myself. Neil, you've lost me again. Your experience of yourself? God, yes, let me explain it to you this way. In the beginning, that which is all there was, and there was nothing else. Yet all that is could not know itself, because all that is all there was, and there was nothing else. And so all that is was not. For in the absence of something else, all that is not. This is the great is not is to which mystics have referred from the beginning of time. Now all that is knew it was all there was, but this was not enough, for it could only know its utter magnificence conceptually, not experientially. Yet the experience of itself is that for which it longed, for it wanted to know what it felt like to be so magnificent. Still, this was impossible, because the very term magnificent is a relative term. All that is could not know what it felt like to be magnificent unless that which is not showed up. In the absence of that which is not, that which is not. Do you understand? Neil, I think so. Keep going. I'm going to explain this, guys, because this is where it gets really complicated for some people. God, all right. The one thing that all that is knew is that there was nothing else. And so it could and would never know itself from a reference point outside of itself. Such a point did not exist. Only one reference point existed, and that was the single place within. The is not is, the am not am. Still, the all of everything chose to know itself experientially. This energy, this pure, unseen, unheard, unobserved, and therefore unknown by anyone else energy, chose to experience itself as the utter magnificence it was. In order to do this, it realized it would have to use a reference point within. It resonated quite correctly that any portion of itself would necessarily have to be less than the whole, and that if it thus simply divided itself into portions, each portion being less than the whole could look back on the rest of itself and see magnificence. And so all that is divided itself, becoming in one glory, let me repeat that because the words sound tricky. And so all that is divided itself, becoming in one glorious moment that which is this and that which is that. For the first time, this and that existed, quite apart from each other, and still both existed simultaneously, as did all that was neither. Thus, three elements suddenly existed, that which is here, that which is there, and that which is neither here nor there, but which must exist for here and there to exist. It is the nothing which holds the everything. It is the non-space which holds the space. It is the all which holds the parts. Can you understand this? Are you following this? Neil. I think I am, actually. Believe it or not, you have used such clear illustration that I think I'm actually understanding this. God, I am going to go further. Now, this nothing which holds the everything is what people call God, yet that is not accurate, either, for it suggests that there is something God is not, namely, everything that is not nothing. But I am all things, seen and unseen, is what I said, seen and unseen. So this description of me as the great unseen, the no thing, or the space between, an essentially Eastern mystical definition of God, is no more accurate than the essentially Western practical description of God as all that is seen. Those who believe that God is all that is and all that is not are those whose understanding is correct. Now, in creating that which is here and that which is there, God made it possible for God to know itself. In the moment of this great explosion from within, God created reality, the greatest gift God ever gave to itself. Thus, relationship is the greatest gift God ever gave to you, a point to be discussed in detail later. From the no-thing thus sprang the everything, a spiritual event entirely consistent, incidentally, with what your scientists call the Big Bang Theory. As the elements of all raced forth, time was created, for a thing was first here, then it was there, and the period it took to get from here to there was measurable. Just as the parts of itself which are seen began to define themselves relative to each other, so too did the parts which are unseen. God knew that for love to exist and to know itself as pure love, its exact opposite had to exist as well. So God voluntarily created the great polarity, the absolute opposite of love, everything that love is not, what is now called fear. In the moment fear existed, God could exist as a thing that could be experienced. It is this creation of duality between love and its opposites which humans refer to in their various mythologies as the birth of evil, the fall of Adam, the rebellion of Satan, and so forth. Just as you have chosen to personify pure love as the character you call God, so have you chosen to personify abject fear as the character you call the devil. Some on earth have established rather elaborate mythologies around this event, complete with scenarios of battles and war, angelic soldiers and devilish warriors, the forces of good and evil, of light and dark. The mythology has been mankind's early attempt to understand and to tell others in a way they could understand, a cosmic occurrence of which the human soul is deeply aware, but of which the mind can barely conceive. In rendering the universe as a divided version of itself, God produced from pure energy all that now exists, both seen and unseen. In other words, not only was the physical universe thus created, but the metaphysical universe as well. The part of God which forms the second half of the am-not-am equation also exploded into an infinite number of units smaller than the whole. These energy units you would call spirits. In some of your religious mythologies, it is stated that God the Father had many spirit children. This parallel to the human experiences of life multiplying itself seems to be the only way the masses could be made to hold in reality the idea of the sudden appearance, the sudden existence of countless spirits in the kingdom of heaven. In this instance, your mythical tales and stories are not so far from ultimate reality, for the endless spirits comprising the totality of me are, in a cosmic sense, my offspring. My divine purpose in dividing myself was to create sufficient parts of me so that I could know myself experientially. There is only one way for the Creator to know itself experientially as the Creator, and that is to create. And so I gave to each of the countless parts of me, to all of my spirit children, the same power to create which I have as the whole. This is what your religions mean when they say that you were created in the image and likeness of God. This doesn't mean, as some have suggested, that our physical bodies look alike, although God can adopt whatever physical form God chooses for a particular purpose. It does mean that our essence is the same. We are composed of the same stuff. We are the same stuff, with all of the same properties and abilities, including the ability to create physical reality out of thin air. My purpose in creating you, my spiritual offspring, for me to know myself as God. I have no way to do that save through you. Thus, it can be said, and has been many times, that my purpose for you is that you should know yourselves as me. This seems so amazingly simple, yet it becomes very complex, because there is only one way for you to know yourself as me, and that is for you first to know yourself as not me. Now try to follow this. Fight to keep up, because this gets very subtle here. Are you ready? Neil, I think so. God, good. Remember, you've asked for this explanation. You've waited for it for years. You've asked for it in layman's terms, not theological doctrines or scientific theories. Neil, yes, I know what I've asked. God, and having asked, so shall you receive. Now, to keep things simple, I'm going to use your Children of God mythological model as a basis for discussion, because it is a model with which you are familiar, and in many ways it is not that far off. So let's go back to how this process of self-knowing must work. There is one way I could have caused all of my spiritual children to know themselves as parts of me, and that was simply to tell them. This I did. But you see, it was not enough for spirit to simply know itself as God, or part of God, or children of God, or inheritors of the kingdom, or whatever mythology you want to use. As I've already explained, knowing something and experiencing it are two very different things. Spirit longed to know itself experientially, just as I did. Conceptual awareness was not enough for you, so I devised a plan. It is the most extraordinary idea in all of the universe and the most spectacular collaboration. I say collaboration because all of you are in it with me. Under the plan, you as pure spirit would enter the physical universe just created. This is because physicality is the only way to know experientially what you know conceptually. It is, in fact, the reason I created the physical cosmos to begin with, and the system of relativity which governs it and all creation. One in the physical universe, you, my spirit children, could experience what you know of yourself. But first, you had to come to know the opposite. To explain this simplistically, you cannot know yourself as tall until you become aware of short. You cannot experience the part of yourself that you call fat unless you also come to know thin. Taken the ultimate logic, you cannot experience yourself as what you are until you've encountered what you are not. This is the purpose of the theory of relativity and all physical life. It is by that which you are not that you yourself are defined. Now, in the case of the ultimate knowing, in the case of knowing yourself as the creator, you cannot experience yourself as creator unless and until you create. And you cannot create yourself until you uncreate yourself. In a sense, you have to first not be in order to be. Do you follow? Neil, I think. God, stay with it. Of course, there is no way for you to not be who and what you are. You simply are that pure creative spirit, have been always and always will be. So you did the next best thing. You caused yourself to forget who you really are. Upon entering the physical universe, you relinquished your remembrance of yourself. This allows you to choose to be who you are, rather than simply waking up in the castle, so to speak. It is in the act of choosing to be, rather than simply being told that you are a part of God, that you experience yourself as being at total choice, which is what, by definition, God is. Yet, how can you have a choice about something over which there is no choice? You cannot not be my offspring, no matter how hard you try, but you can forget. You are, have always been, and will always be a divine part of the divine whole, a member of the body. That is why the act of rejoining the whole, of returning to God, is called remembrance. You actually choose to remember who you really are, or to join together with the various parts of you to experience the all of you, which is to say, the all of me. Your job on earth, therefore, is not to learn because you already know, but to remember who you are and to remember who everyone else is. That is why a big part of your job is to remind others. That is to remind them so that they can remember also. All the wonderful spiritual teachers have been doing just that. It is your sole purpose. That is to say, your sole purpose. Neil, my God, this is so simple and so symmetrical. I mean, it all fits in. It all suddenly fits. I see now a picture I have never quite put together before. God, good. That is good. That is the purpose of this dialogue. You have asked me for answers. I have promised I would give them to you. You will make of this dialogue a book, and you will render my words accessible to many people. It is part of your work. Now you have many questions, many inquiries to make about life. We have here placed the foundation. We have laid the groundwork for other understandings. Let us go to these other questions, and do not worry. If there is something about what we've just gone through you do not thoroughly understand, it will all be clear to you soon enough. And I'll leave it at that. I love this book. I absolutely love this book. And if you've been able to follow along, that's exactly why. So I want to circle back to this, because this is the important piece that I think we all need to take away. We believe, most people, in the basic idea about the universe and God and so forth, is that, God is this old white man on a cloud somewhere, making choices. And we are all these servants, or all these minions who are just there to worship and there to receive this greatness or this judgment from God. That does not fit or even connect to the concept of God that is described in this book, or even in the idea of God that I have come to know through my own personal experiences and also through my communication with Aja, my soul. We are all God. We all exist simultaneously. We are all expressions of the divine. God, as a whole, God as a whole chose to know itself, to experience itself, right? Because why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you want to experience your greatness? In order to experience your greatness, you have to have a point of reference. And if God is all things, if God is complete, all the seen and the unseen, then it limits the ability. It does not allow for the ability to experience self, because there's no point of reference. So just the simple desire, the consciousness of God was I want to know myself. I want to experience myself. I want to be able to fathom myself. And you can't fathom yourself if you don't have a starting point. So in that moment when the question was asked, all of a sudden a massive transformation occurred. And the transformation did not take away from God, did not add to God. The transformation simply reorganized God into a multitude of conscious pieces. We exist as these conscious pieces. And so as these conscious pieces, I can turn around and look back and see myself as God from this unique vantage point. This is the awe of the universe. This is the awe of awakening. When we realize that we are these conscious pieces, and that me talking to you is simply me talking to myself, me looking back at God is me looking back at myself. When we realize this truth, and we realize that this world that we live in, this body that I am using, this interaction and these opportunities of relationship with each other that we have, these were not mistakes. These were willful experiences that we chose, because it gave us the unique opportunity to experience ourselves through the lack of ourselves and the assuming of ourselves. In other words, when we experience who we are not, when I experience myself in form as the thing that I know myself not to be in the various lifetimes that I've had, in the various versions of myself that I am personally connected to, directly connected to, it has shown me what I am not, because I have experienced myself as not being this and not being that, meaning when I've acted in ways or experienced in ways that did not reflect the truth and authentic beingness of being source and all things, then it causes me to shift and to change and to choose the opposite. It is that duality. It is the opposites. It is the opportunity to know yourself through the experiencing of the thing that you are not. And so when that happens, it causes us to embrace that which we know ourselves to be, which is love, which is connection, which is divinity, which is all things. Even though I'm still in this perspective, I'm still in this physical form, knowing that has allowed me to expand beyond my typical standard beingness in this lifetime, in this form, in this physical reality we call the universe. All of us are the same. All of us are God, but we've forgotten, and we intentionally forgot that which we are so that we could experience what we're not. Because if I know myself to be this thing, why would I want to experience not being this thing unless it served a purpose for me to know myself as the divine by having that experience and then making that switch and making a different choice. So that is what this is all about. A lot of us here, we get stuck in these cycles where we are constantly repeating the same mistakes. We're constantly repeating the same scenarios. We're constantly choosing the same thing, desiring a different experience. We choose what we are not, desiring what we are, which is source, which is love, which is that full connection of things. And until we realize that it is our choice, that we are not forced to make that choice, we are not victimized by the not choosing, that we are intentionally choosing all that we have and all that we go through, even if it's a negative. Once we realize that it is a choice and that we have chosen this and we've given ourselves amnesia so that we can make the wrong choice, then we realize that we remember. And once we remember what we are, then we choose the opposite. And that is when we embrace the greatness of ourselves as source in form. This is what all the masters have done. And once you embrace yourself as a physical representation of the divine, you unlock your potential. You unlock that which you are capable of here. And this is why I can do what I do. This is why I can see what I see. This is why I know the things that I know, because I chose to accept what I am, as you are able to do so as well, which is why there's really nothing that special about me versus you, because you can do the exact same things that I can do as well. Okay, so I hope that cleared things up for you guys. So let's bounce around here. I'm going to see if any of you have any questions relating to the study group and the material. I'm not doing readings, guys, so if you are asking for a personal reading, sorry, but this is the wrong time for that. Let's see. Good evening. What are the people joining? Good evening. So there's nothing over here on this side. So let me jump over here and see if anyone here has any questions regarding the material. There's nothing here as well. Yeah, so that's it, guys. Those were all the questions, because there were no questions. So I hope you guys got the understanding and the explanation. I love you all. I absolutely love this book, and it is one of those books where every time I read it, it just reminds me and helps me to remember, because sometimes we can get lost and forget, especially when we deal with our human experiences, because we are so attached and feel so connected to that reality, even though it is the illusion that we've given ourselves. But it serves us. It isn't for nothing. It serves us. So you shouldn't dismiss the reality that we exist in, because it does serve the grander purpose of the soul. I love you all, and I will see you guys in a couple of weeks after the holidays. I hope y'all have a happy holiday season, a Merry Christmas, and I look forward to seeing you